Wole Soyinka's The Trials of Brother Jero, 1963, is a satirical one-act play that critiques the proliferation of fake prophets and the commercialization of religion in post-colonial Nigeria. Set in a Lagosian beach community, the play tells the story of Brother Jero, a self-proclaimed prophet who uses manipulation, hypocrisy, and deceit to maintain his power and influence over gullible followers. The play, written in the early years of Nigeria's independence, reflects Soyinka's sharp wit and deep concern about religious exploitation, political ambition, and the moral decay that threatened to accompany the new nation's freedom. With biting humor and vivid characterization, Soyinka exposes the fraudulence of self-styled spiritual leaders while also examining the deeper societal forces that allow such figures to flourish. Setting: the entire play is set on a beach near Lagos, where various prophets have set up makeshift churches and conduct their ministries. The beach becomes a symbolic space, a no man's land of spirituality, performance, and deception, where nothing is sacred and everything is up for manipulation. Main characters: Brother Jero, the central figure, a charismatic, flamboyant, and cunning man who calls himself a prophet. He manipulates religious faith to maintain power. Chume, Brother Jero's devoted follower, a gullible messenger in the civil service, frustrated with his life and domineering wife. Amope, Chume's wife, a shrewish, domineering woman who suspects Jero's deceit. The old prophet, Jero's mentor and former master, whom Jero tricks and pushes out to take over his territory. A member of parliament, MP, a politician who comes to the beach seeking spiritual help to achieve higher political status. Plot overview: the play begins with Brother Jero's monologue, where he confesses to the audience that he is not a true prophet but a manipulator. He brags about how he deceived his old master to take over his spiritual territory and boasts about the gullibility of his followers, whom he calls misguided sheep. One of his most loyal followers is Chume, a civil servant troubled by domestic issues. Chume wants Jero's permission to beat his overbearing wife, but Jero forbids it under the guise of spiritual discipline. Though in reality, he wants to avoid confrontation with Amope, who owes him money and is aware of his duplicity. Chume becomes increasingly frustrated, while Amope arrives at the beach to confront Brother Jero, confirming his worst fears. She demands payment for a cloth she sold to him and threatens to expose him. Jero flees and tries to avoid her while keeping up his spiritual pretense before his followers. Later, a pompous member of parliament arrives seeking prayers to gain a ministerial position. Brother Jero sees an opportunity to elevate his own status and influence through this connection. He performs a fake ritual, laying hands on the MP and promising him success. The play ends with Jero declaring that he is rising in influence, that even politicians are now bowing to his power, and that his next conquest will be the entire nation. The play closes with his triumphant monologue: "I am a prophet. A prophet by birth and by inclination. I am going places." Analysis: 1. Religious satire and moral hypocrisy. At its core, The Trials of Brother Jero is a biting satire of pseudo-religious figures who exploit faith for personal gain. Brother Jero is portrayed as a quintessential conman, using biblical language, spiritual theatrics, and false humility to manipulate his followers. Soyinka exposes how such prophets are often more interested in wealth, fame, and influence than in genuine spiritual guidance. The religious environment on the beach is a theatrical market, where each prophet is a performer and religion is commodified. This critique resonates with broader concerns in Nigerian society, both in the 1960s and today, where some religious leaders amass wealth and political clout while preaching to an increasingly impoverished populace. 2. Post-colonial disillusionment. Though humorous, the play also reflects post-independence disillusionment in Nigeria. After independence in 1960, many Nigerians hoped for national renewal, but the political and spiritual spheres soon became riddled with corruption. Brother Jero's manipulation mirrors the actions of politicians, who make promises of progress and prosperity while seeking personal enrichment. The presence of the Member of Parliament in the play symbolizes the intertwining of religion and politics, two institutions that should serve the people, but are instead shown as mutually exploitative. Through this allegory, Soyinka laments the betrayal of the people's trust by both spiritual and political leaders. 3. Gullibility and the role of the follower. While the play critiques Jero, it also implicates his followers in the perpetuation of the charade. Shumei is portrayed as a sympathetic but naive man who seeks spiritual solutions to personal problems instead of confronting them directly. He represents the ordinary Nigerian, caught between domestic stress, bureaucratic stagnation, and false hope. His unquestioning faith in Jero reflects how desperation, fear, and ignorance make people susceptible to manipulation. Soyinka suggests that spiritual deception thrives not just because of corrupt leaders but also because of passive and credulous followers. 4. Gender, power, and marriage. The domestic tension between Shumei and Amope provides another layer of analysis, touching on gender roles and power dynamics. Amope is domineering, loud, and suspicious, presented in a somewhat exaggerated comic light. Shumei, though physically strong, is psychologically submissive, illustrating how power in marriage is not always dictated by gender. Brother Jero's refusal to let Shumei confront his wife has less to do with moral restraint and more with self-preservation. Amope's knowledge of Jero threatens to unravel his credibility. The marriage subplot serves both as comic relief and a metaphor for broader power struggles in society, where those with perceived authority maintain their position by suppressing confrontation and truth. 5. Performance, deception, and language. The play's theatricality is central to its critique. Jero is a performer, using costume, his flowing gown, dramatic gestures, and spiritual jargon to sustain his image. His speech is filled with biblical phrases, exaggerated piety, and manipulative rhetoric. Language becomes a tool of control. Soyinka draws attention to the performative nature of power, where charisma and presentation can substitute for substance. This use of performativity highlights the fluid boundaries between religion, politics, and theater, each a stage for the exercise of influence. 6. Irony and humor. Soyinka employs irony masterfully. Jero presents himself as righteous while engaging in deception. Shumei seeks spiritual liberation but is made more miserable. The politician comes for divine help but becomes an instrument in Jero's ambition. These ironic twists create humor, but the laughter is tinged with discomfort. Soyinka uses comedy as a vehicle for critique, allowing the audience to confront serious issues under the guise of entertainment. 7. The ending and Jero's triumph. The final scene, with Jero boasting about his growing power, is both comic and chilling. His monologue signals a shift from small-time conman to a more ambitious manipulator, who now dreams of national control. The repetition of, "I am going places," reflects both personal ambition and systemic rot, the idea that deceit is rewarded in society. This ending warns the audience that figures like Jero are not just isolated frauds, but symptoms of a larger moral and institutional failure. Conclusion. Wole Soyinka's The Trials of Brother Jero is a masterful satirical play that critiques religious exploitation, political opportunism, and the gullibility of society. Through the cunning, comical figure of Brother Jero, Soyinka explores the complex dynamics between spiritual authority and personal ambition, exposing how religion can be used not for salvation but for control. Despite its humor and brevity, the play addresses profound questions. What is the role of religion in society? Why do people trust charismatic leaders despite evidence of their corruption? How does post-colonial disillusionment fuel the rise of such figures? By setting the play in a liminal, performative space and focusing on vivid characters and sharp dialogue, Soyinka invites his audience not only to laugh but to reflect, and ultimately, to resist the spiritual and political charlatans who thrive on the people's desperation. Even decades after its publication, The Trials of Brother Jero remains a relevant and incisive commentary on the enduring problems of moral decay, blind faith, and the abuse of authority in both religious and political spheres.